Thank you, dear Georgi, for giving me the chance to present some ideas and issues about the Austrian constitution. I also would like to welcome our ambassador, Madame Ikic-Böhm. We just had, just before summer, a very successful tour of Austrian parliamentarians here in Bulgaria, and of course Schengen was a top topic. Before that I was in Romania. I'm optimist about this issue. We've made little progress with the Air Schengen and the Air Sea. Schengen, it's not a solution yet, but it's 2 steps forward to normalize the situation. I must say I've always been against the blocking of Romania, Bulgaria, and Croatia originally, and I said this in Parliament again and again. I'm not going into the details of it, you just should know my position, and there is now some hope that we can maybe find now in this interregnum in Austria. It's not a real interregnum, but we had national elections and we don't have a new government yet. It will be a coalition government, of course. At the moment, the talks seem to be realistic to form, well, to call it an Ampel coalition, a traffic lights coalition, like in German is a bit negatively maybe touched with a negative air, because
don't worry, we don't have a government too.
So anyway, so we would like to get the topic really off the table and find a good and fair solution, which is good for the economy, which is good for security, which is good for our common borders. But I think Romania and Bulgaria have a very well functioning control system of the borders. Well, anyway, I think that's enough for the moment. I'm here to speak about the Austrian constitution, and I would like to start with a quote introducing or describing Austria, the cultural, historic issue with relating with the constitution. One of the experts of the Austrian constitution called Austria a small, mostly alpine state situated in the heart of Europe, with a great cultural and imperial tradition. Imperial means political tradition, suffering from some severe traumata and struggles, with the dark sides of its past and its heritage. All this is reflected in its constitution and how this constitution is read and lived. It's Professor Stelzer who was giving this description, and I find it quite efficient and correct. And of course I'm talking about this 1920 constitution in its version of 1929, so we will touch also these changes that had been made then. And the Article 1 of the Constitution, of our Constitution, says Austria is a democratic republic. His law emanates from the people. So this is, of course, a pure democratic principle. But Austria is not a democracy because we call it or we define it like that in the Article 1 of the Constitution. Austria is a democratic state because the spirit of the Constitution is lived throughout the Constitution and in the political practice. And I will give some examples later on for that. Democracy can exist on the paper, but it's not lived. And it needs institutions to live this, and it needs the participation of the citizens. A democracy without an open, fair participation of the citizens is not a democracy. So there are, of course, certain freedoms which play an essential role. Then second, the federalist principle. We don't have many federalist countries in Europe. The federalist principle, Austria, in the Article 2, says Austria is a federal state. Now, I'm not quoting anymore, but the meaning is being made up by 9 regional states. Now, this is, I would say, very similar to Germany, a bit similar to the United States, similar to Belgium. The old GSSR was a federal state between, I call it Bohemia, the Austrian way, or the Czech part and Slovakia. And of course, Switzerland is made up in a federalist construction. So basically, I think this is, these are the few federalist countries. I'm a convinced supporter of federalist structures. And I may say I'm not only an expert on human rights issues, but also an expert on autonomy and self-administration, which I would call very efficient in a democracy and in allowing local freedom, cultural autonomy, economic autonomy, legal autonomy, even to a certain degree. And I've been for many years a member of the South Tyrol subcommittee in the Austrian parliament. So the South Tyrol model of autonomy is especially, means a lot to me and to Austria. Now, Austria has had the constitution, the first constitution in the world, that explicitly established a constitutional court. Of course, there are many supreme courts in the world that cover the question of a constitutional court. The advantage is that we created a body, not a bureaucratic structure, but we created a political body in the Constitution, supported by the Constitution, that has experts, pure experts, on the question of the Constitution, about the practical issues of the acting of this constitutional court, especially in the present days. I speak later. And the fourth principles, after democratic principles, federalism, a special position of the constitutional court is, of course, rule of law, of course. The man who is the spirit and the main creator, actually the principal architect of this Austrian constitution, is Hans Kelsen. And I just have to say some words about this incredible personality, who met, unfortunately, quite an Austrian destiny and fate, and it has a symbol also of the dark sides, the positive sides, the light sides, and the dark sides of Austrian history. Now, Hans Kelsen comes from a Jewish family, born in Prague, moved to Vienna like many of our intellectuals, artists, and entrepreneurs in the monarchy, as we call this time, in the 19th century. He he attended actually a Protestant school in Vienna, and he became a Christian in 1905. Later, he joined the Protestant church, Augsburger Bekenntnis, the main German or with German origin Protestantism. Well, he was a jurist. Hans Kelsen was a legal philosopher and a political philosopher. And in 1917, he became extraordinary professor of the Vienna University. And after creating the Austrian constitution in a very close and tight cooperation with our first federal chancellor of the new republic after the monarchy, with Karl Renner, he created this constitution. After that, in 1920, then he became member of the first board of judges of the Constitutional Court, and I will give you then two examples about his beliefs as a legal philosopher. In 1929, there was this constitutional change. I'm going to speak more about that later on. Now, about the work of the Constitutional Court, I will give you two examples which were very controversial topics in Austria, in the Austria of the 1920s. Now, the first one seems maybe a bit strange and ridiculous to you. This is about the divorce. The divorce, the legal divorce, the divorce of couples, of spouses. Two people get married, but after some time they find they don't fit. And you know, the most dangerous situation of fact to get murdered is to be married. Because in Austria, 85% of the murders are within the closest part of the family. So it makes sense that people do get divorced when they cannot go on with each other. So in 1980, there was this turnover, a sort of soft revolution in all over the Habsburg Empire, but also in Austria. Austria became a democratic republic. Habsburg family, or most part of the Habsburg family, had to leave the country. And then in this period of transference, the biggest province of Austria had a social democratic governor. This was Albert Seeber. The name is not important for you here, but this social democratic governor decided that people couples that could not go on with each other anymore, they can get divorced. There were created rules about that. There had to be the separation from table and bed is, well, I don't know what the exact expression is in English, but you know what I mean. And this social democratic governor declared some divorces. You had to apply, and he divorced people, couples. This was about, I would say, the quantity was about 300 couples got divorced in that time. Now you can imagine who was violently against divorce. Can you imagine? The church, of course. The Catholic Church fought immediately, and its political wing, the Christian Social Party, of course, again. And they brought the decision of the Social Democratic governor, Albert Seeber, to this constitutional court. And there was a really wild debate, and Hans Kelsen, already being on the board, declared that according to a positive attitude or a law being set positively by men, it makes sense that marriages that went down to accept the divorce, that the state declares them being divorced legally. But the government insisted on that issue, and we had this humanely terrible situation that the government forced these couples to stay together. Of course, they did not stay together, but they were in a terrible situation. And these husbands and wives could not marry again, and they were declared as couples. So this was a humanely catastrophe for families. Now the second thing was the cremation of corpses. Now the mayor of Vienna, Jakob Reimann, the name is not important, only people who know Vienna, they know the Reumannplatz, a bit dangerous area now. No, I'm exaggerating. Sometimes there are struggles and fights between Turks and Kurds there. But we're very proud of it, of this square, with one of the fantastic early public baths in Vienna in the 20s. And the mayor of Vienna had erected a crematorium, or we call it the Hall of Fire, a crematorium that people who decide they don't want to have the corpses put into the earth after death, but they can get cremated. Now, who do you think was against the cremation of bodies? So, again, we had the same political situation, and in this case, it was brought again to this constitutional court, and the constitutional court decided that the mayor of Vienna was doing wrong, but it was just politically irrelevant or constitutionally irrelevant issue, and they accepted his decision. So this was a bit a compromise, not to provocate the government, but to let it be. And you see, we are now touching things that even a constitutional court can have a deep effect on the private life of people. And I would like to quote Thomas Jefferson here in the Declaration of Independence, 1776. In North America, Thomas Jefferson used the expression the pursuit of happiness. The pursuit of happiness is the main political goal of the political bodies, of political movements, of the state as such, the pursuit of happiness. Now, and Thomas Jefferson meant not only the political happiness in a state, but politics have to work that also the social structure, the structure of values, the possibilities that individuals and families have should contribute to their personal happiness. Now, I think, unfortunately, the pursuit of happiness has never found its way into the American Constitution, and I think in none of the European or other constitutions. But anyway, as a political animal, as I would call myself, I find this idea that politics have to care for the people and their personal and family pursuit of happiness is most essential as a political task. Now, so we're touching, of course, with these two examples of political decisions, and as the Constitutional Court of Austria was concerned in the 1920s, these are two examples for, of course, for legal positivism or normativism. Just to give you examples, because I don't want to talk too much theoretically about legal positivism, but I want to give you two examples. So, law is man-made. There is no law by nature for everybody. law can be changed. Law is, in the best sense, the outcome in our modern societies of a democratic process, and the individual rights of the citizens are protected. This is the consequence. So there are no divine laws. Not a god, not a dictator, not nature creates the world of laws. And laws always include our values, and they are responsible also a bit for our happiness. So this I wanted to say about the approach to this legal positivism. Now, 1929, this Hans Kelsen was ousted from the Constitutional Court. The conservative government was mad at him and did not forgive his position as member of the Constitutional Court, and he was not nominated again. Now, he was maybe the jurist or the political jurist, legal philosopher of the 20th century, and he got so many honors in the United States later on, where he had to emigrate as a Jew, a de facto family from his family. So Austria let him go. So this was, of course, a big political mistake, and we never called him back after 1945, never. He went to Geneva. He took a professorship in Germany first, but he was the first German professor that was ousted by the Nazis already in 1933. I think he was professor in Cologne, you know,
yes.
in Cologne, where, interesting enough, Adenauer, the late German chancellor, was, the Germans call it Oberbürgermeister, Lord Mayor, maybe something like that. Adenauer was Bürgermeister, and Adenauer supported Adenauer was smart enough he supported the professorship. I didn't know how it worked, that he influenced the university in Cologne, and what Austria ousted him, let him go. He was ousted from the Constitutional Court, but Adenauer was really greedy to take him, and then the Nazis ousted him immediately again. Then he was a professor in Geneva, Switzerland, and then in Prague. And in Prague already he had to give up, because the violent anti-Semitism there of German nationalist Nazi students, you know, the Czech Republic then was 1/3 German, 2/3 Czech in the Czech area, and this was unacceptable, so he emigrated to the United States, and there he wrote his main works about legal positivism. Now, the Constitution, but after 1945, I would like to stress the fact that we have an anti-fascist constitution because of the experience of our countries. I'm speaking of Germany as well as Austria. Now, the anti-fascist character of our constitution is that Nazi symbols and the activity or reactivity of Nazism, racism, hate speech is forbidden by law. And if you get a trial, if you get a trial and you're sentenced, you go to jail for that. There are discussions about the amount of punishment. This is okay, I think, but this is an essential thing. Talking about institutions, and then I would come to an end. Now, my experience as a politician is that single politicians or single personalities do not count as much as the institutions. A democracy, a democratic state, works perfectly with strong institutions. As citizens, as politicians, as scientists who work with the structures, we should do our best to strengthen these institutions of a democratic state. Now, the civil servants, like we are, we come and go, but usually we're a lifetime working for the state. Ambassadors, like I'm a civil servant of the city of Vienna and politician at the same time. Members of parliament usually stay 10, 15, 25, 30 years, but ministers, how long do ministers stay in the office? Short, a couple of years. I'm not speaking now about the Bulgarian prime minister. But usual members of a government stay for a couple of years, that's the maximum. We had once a minister from the Freedom Party who was famous for driving his sports car. He stayed, I think, 18 days he was minister. That was in about 20 years ago. So, strengthening the institutions means it starts with the parliament. I wasn't speaking too much about the parliament in this constitution. I found the Austrian constitution being the first constitution having a constitutional court, and experience with a constitutional court I found more interesting actually for you than speaking about the parliament. But I must say the parliament as the forum for democratic, open discussions and the ability to compromise, find solutions with which a big majority of the country, of the people in the country, of the citizens can live. And this democratic principle, this finding compromises as the basis of solutions, is the essential moment in democracy, in international politics. Now we have sort of times actually with strange politicians.
It was very well said. I think there are some journalists. It would be nice to your statement to appear about the majorities creating compromises to appear in tomorrow's newspapers. There is nobody from our national parliament here, but it's a very, very hot topic you are talking about, maybe. We need some kind of compromise, or we're going to have the 8 elections in 4 years. So what you say is very important for our situation here.
But the way finding, approaching each other, the climate in the parliament, the ability, like I have colleagues, of course, but also friends in all factions of the Austrian parliament, also in the FPO. My comrades are not very happy when I say that, but that's the truth. And we have to talk, members of the parliament have to talk to each other. And this is the same, and this is really the final sentence now. We have to practice this in international politics. I always said in Austria, you think I'm quoting now Mr. Trump, but the war in the Ukraine has to be finished as quickly as possible. As quickly as possible. I'm so sad for every Ukraine, for every Russian who dies there, and also the Western mercenaries, or now the North Korean, they died. It's most terrible. And this war in the Ukraine, as well as the Middle East, is most explosive. And I only can hope that the Ukrainians get a new president. I'm very, I must say, I'm very positive that Mr. Trump, the new president, will find a solution for the conflict. It's most dangerous for us, in Europe, and there has to be a solution, there has to be peace, and the conditions of the peace, I said it since 2 years, I've said this in 2 years, will be a compromise in this issue. Thank you very much.